right, guys, we're at Laguna Seca. It's GRIDLIFE, and we're here with Michael. We've recently finished doing a prototype setup of our Motorsport Pro suspension on Michael's 350Z. We did a bunch of development work, but you know what? Today I'm actually not here to just talk about just the suspension. I just kind of want to show you guys like what we do and what it's like to be at a track and race in an amateur series like GRIDLIFE. And what better person to talk about it with Michael? He really encompasses everything that is to do with amateur racing and all the things he's accomplished with that. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about your background and just what you drove before this, how you got here?
I'm Michael. Sometimes people call me Stubz. That would be my nickname that I've gone by for a very long time. You could probably tell why. My start into motorsports was very young. I got into NASCAR thanks to my dad. You know, back in the day, we would go to the races, and that kind of got me hooked on motorsports in general. I didn't know that you could go to the track until a group of friends told me one day, hey, we're going to go to the track. And I was just like, what do you mean? They convinced me to come out. I brought my car at the time, which was a Subaru WRX, actually. And it was a terrible experience. I had a ton of fun, but the car was not up to par as a stock car. I didn't know much about modifying cars. I didn't do much at the time. From there, I just took a deep dive, and I kind of learned what I wanted to do with motorsports and how I wanted to get further involved. Enter 350Z. I ended up purchasing this car, and actually not this car, a different one before. This is my second one. Get into that another time. But basically, I knew I wanted to race. I knew I wanted to be going against other people. I had found out about time attack, and it's kind of a great stepping stone to get into racing because racing is kind of a high barrier. And I think actually from the outside, grassroots racing and just getting into racing in general seems really difficult, but it's actually not. It's much simpler and much easier than people think, but it just has that kind of stature. So going through time attack and kind of climbing the ranks through that and then transitioning into racing was really easy, really seamless. And I'm glad I did go that route. And I hope more people do continue to go that route because it's an amazing time. It's the most fun I've ever had.
You said you started off with a WRX. Like, were you doing time attack with a WRX?
Just HPDE in it. I did my first couple track days in it, and then I ended up selling it because I knew I wanted to get into something that could be more reliable, easier to work on, and just a better overall platform for, you know, growing as a driver. So that's why I wanted to get into rear-wheel drive. That's why I ended up buying a Z.
So for us, the Z has been a very interesting platform for us to do some development on. I don't have a lot of experience with Zs. This is kind of like as far as race cars go, this is a new. As far as race cars go, this is kind of like a new area for us. And I know that Michael's gone through quite a bit to get to the point where he had a time attack car to something that's now capable for wheel to wheel and is doing well in GRIDLIFE. So, Michael, I just want to ask you, what kind of challenges have you had with this vehicle, and like what has that been like?
So I've had a lot of challenges with this car. This car is not actually very well loved in the road racing community or just grip community in general. You usually see as drift cars, of course. So with that being said, there is not actually a ton of development behind these cars in terms of making them go fast, which is kind of where you guys step in. And, you know, we have this whole thing going on with the Motorsport Coilovers to dial the car in and really kind of push the chassis to new heights that it hadn't been developed to yet. That on top of a lot of other challenges that just aren't really out there, that people don't talk about, people don't really know. The cars, they overheat really easily. You have to take care of the cooling. The brake packages are not very good. The car is really heavy. It doesn't look like it, but it's actually really heavy in comparison to other chassis. Yeah, just overall, it's an uphill battle of a car. It's kind of an underdog, and that's kind of why I like it, actually, because I like that challenge. It's fun. It's fun to have that challenge.
Would you recommend someone that's new to the sport and to the industry, would you recommend them start with a 350Z for a time attack or wheel-to-wheel?
I'll say this. With a time attack or wheel-to-wheel Z, if you want to have fun, it's probably the most reliable, best bang for buck to have fun. If you want to be competitive, there's better options as of right now.
All right, well said. So one thing I want to touch on is how we actually got to this point. So like I said, we haven't done a full-on race car like this with Motorsport Pro. And it was pretty interesting because we asked you to come over to our facility. You dropped off the car. We started off with a 3D scan, and then we were modeling suspension, and we actually found some kind of interesting things as we modeled this car. I remember we were going through some of the suspension travel that we'd see on the computer, and we noticed something kind of interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on that based on the CAD model, you know, suspension movements?
Right. So actually what we were finding out is that with the way the geometry is set up, it produces toe curves that are not exactly ideal. So to combat that, you guys were kind of working through the valving and how the suspension was going to be set up in order to kind of combat those issues. That way we can, you know, minimize them as much as possible, because in this kind of racing, we're not really allowed to change the pickup points the way that would make them ideal. So we have to get creative in other ways, which is where we step in with the Annex Coilovers and figure out a way to make that better.
Unfortunately, you had a little bit of a rough start to this weekend. Michael got 3 laps out, and then we had an engine failure. But you know what? That's okay. We're looking forward to the next time that you can come out with a car with a fresh engine. But hey, I just want to say, thank you so much for working with us. It's been really exciting, and we can't wait to see what you're going to do next to this car.
Definitely, man. Thank you guys for the opportunity, and I'm glad that we can continue to try to push this chassis to new heights.